Thank you, Mohanji. He's one of my old, true friends. Namaste to all of you. So, let me start at the beginning and give you a quick journey. Satish Dhawan Auditorium, which is where we are. So, I'll tell you my childhood relationship with Satish Dhawan. Satish Dhawan and my father were together in Engineering College, Lahore. It is called Government College, Lahore. They were both engineering students. So naturally, during my childhood, when Satish Uncle, as we called him, would be visiting Delhi to meet government people and so on, I was in school. My parents would either invite him to our house so we could all interact, and he was a source of inspiration. My parents believed in inspiring us with good thinkers. So Swami Ranganathan, who was head of Ramakrishna Mission in Delhi, later became head of the Ramakrishna Worldwide Order, was very close to my parents. He came to our house many, many times. And so in that mode, Satish Uncle was a frequent visitor, or we would go to his place. My dad would drive me there, and so I could interact. And as a physics, I was interested in physics as a student. So, he could inspire me, and he was keeping track of my progress and so on. The career I chose was because of him. When I finished my school, I got admission into St. Stephen's College for Physics Honours. I also got admission into IIT. And I was a National Science Talent Scholar. In those days, they would pick like 20 people from the whole country and give them scholarship till forever, for as long as you study. So I had to make a choice. And I remember a very defining moment, a very defining conversation in Satish Uncle's home in Delhi with my parents. Because my parents felt that, this guy wants to do physics honors, but what really hardly make money and all that. Whereas if he does engineering, he'll get a job and become an engineer. My father was an engineer. So, we went to Satish Uncle to sort of sort it out. And he's always there, kind of nice to my parents, but give them some chai and they're on the side and talk to me, one-on-one, which I really enjoyed. So he asked me, he said, Rajiv, when you are really enjoying and when you're really fond of, what work you want to do, are you interested more in tinkering with things? Like you take apart a machine and figure out how it works. In that case, you should go for engineering. Or are you interested in tinkering with ideas? Are you abstract thinking? So I said very clearly the second. So after this discussion went on, he said, he should go for physics honors. He's more a physicist. So then he wanted to ask me, what will I do with physics? So I said, I'm interested in philosophy. I was reading as a child I was reading all the kind of philosophy, Indian philosophy, this and that. I was really interested in that. And I want to understand philosophy as in a scientific mind. Because I want to see the unity between, theoretical physics and philosophy. So he then explained to me another idea, another very important point. He said there's a difference between philosophy. There are three disciplines. There is philosophy of science, which is a particular kind of philosophy, and then there is science. So he said, you want to be a philosopher, you want to be a scientist, or do you want to be a philosopher of science? So I said, I want to be a philosopher of science. Actually, this sharpened my thinking, thanks to Satish Dhawan. So every time I've come here since the 1990s, I tell this story, but of course the audience is new, so I have to tell it again. So this is my gratitude to Satish Dhawan, on whom this auditorium is. So for you, it may just be another name, or you don't know who he is, but for me, it's a very important person. So this is what got me started. And then when I switched to computer science, he's also involved. There's a long story how, why I got into computer science from physics and all that, and how that shaped my philosophy. Further, it was a philosophical aspect of computer science, computational theory and these kind of things, Turing machines and whatnot, and the idea of AI philosophically, and the idea of will AI pass the Turing test and all of those kind of things like we were thinking of in those days. Of course, the machines didn't exist, the hardware didn't exist to make it happen, but it was more like futurist in those days. So that's my Satish Dhawan part of the story. Fast forward, in the 1990s, I was invited into this very hall for a talk. And this talk was on what later became the Breaking India book 10 years later, 10, 15 years later. At that time, I didn't call it that. But I remember the talk, it was so packed and there were people sitting in all the stairs, all these corridors, there were people standing everywhere. And there were two kinds of people. At that time, it was so provocative and controversial to say the things that I was saying. And I had some slides also. And people heard with nice pin-drop silence, very polite. And I remember Rodham Narasimha, dear friend of mine, very good friend for a long time. And so he was a philosopher, he was a physicist, he was also interested in Bharatiya issues, so we were connected at many levels. Now, the talk discussed that that as I go and champion the philosophy of science of our culture, the philosophy of science of our culture, I get pushback. People don't want to, people have appropriated it and called it their own because they plagiarized some of this. And basically they want to pigeonhole us and stereotype us as some what I call caste cows and curry syndrome of who we are. And this idea of I want to fight back and I want to see where it is coming from. So this was a talk of that kind. And there were many people in the audience who were very upset at my talk. I remember that. But they were very civil. There was no hooliganism, shouting, muttering, but they were very, raise their hand and say, but they are right about this system that they are accusing us of and you are defending, you are covering up, but they are right. These are people who are into, the same people who are now into all this woke and leftist and all that. They were there that time also. So I remember this auditorium very well as one of the first places where this whole thing, you might now call it the Breaking India thesis. In those days, I called it many different things. And I published articles, many articles and many talks and many slideshows on this thesis since the 1990s. The book came out in 2011, but this is a long drawn journey of mine. Then there's another anecdote in this very auditorium, which also involved Rodham Narasimha. The Templeton Foundation. I had a lot of fights with many people. I'm always fighting, somebody kind of. So I had many arguments that they are taking a lot of Vedic ideas and Christianizing them. And they're saying that this happened out of Christianity, this, that, but taking out of Vedic stuff. And they even send people to come and study all this. Nothing wrong with Christianity, and certainly we should respect each other. No problem with that. But give attribution. Why can't you give, if you give attribution to, Western thinkers, why can't you give attribution to us? So I was always having this squabble with the Templeton Foundation because they're all over the US and they felt that, okay, this guy's, we have to deal with him. So they announced a world conference, I think it happened in 2002, in Institute of Science. And they said, you partner with us because then it will be more legit. Templeton Foundation felt that association with me would give them little cover because otherwise I was going to say that a lot of the stuff they're talking about is actually plagiarized. And they thought that getting me on board would kind of, manage me. So Rodham wrote to me that there is a proposal from Templeton Foundation in which they are claiming that you are partnering with them. Should we accept it? I said, yeah, provided I have some say in the, I've told them I have, so we agreed and it became a three-way. There was this institute here, which was represented by Rodham, and there was Templeton who put in 95% of the money. We were Chota Mota Foundation, we put in 5%, but we got equal say. We got equal say in this. What happened, who are the speakers. Now this was a very big grand affair. Charles Townes, who had won the Nobel Prize for laser, he was here. A lot of these, many big names, this woman who's, the British woman who's into studying apes and gorillas. What's her name? She was here. Famous people were here. Because Templeton had the clout to fly all these people and impress everybody here. Wow, we've got all these Nobel laureates sitting here. And I remember one of the sessions Narayan Murthy launched. So they had co-opted the top people of ours, and they knew how to PR and mesmerize our people. And I was the one who was pointing out, hey, this part thing is from India, this part thing from here, but my job. That was my job. So I gave a talk, because I was one of the 3 sponsors of the whole conference. There were 3 opening talks at the keynotes on the opening day, and I gave one of them. And I gave the very controversial talk. I discussed that whole lot of things that are part of, I didn't name Templeton, but it was obvious. I said that are being marketed, paraded, championed as kind of a global science and global spirituality and science coming together is actually Vedic. And we have to acknowledge that, we have to mention that. And I would mention, Vivekananda there, I would mention various people. So this was here. This is my other experience in this hall and other places on campus. I stayed here and I have good memories. Then, another thing that happened is that when I was giving grants to various American universities and schools on teaching Dharma, my kids were going to a very prominent private school in Princeton. And so naturally, the principal, the teachers of history, culture, religion, they were all my friends. And so I was, one of the things we did is we gave them a grant to send students to India every summer, every spring. And my wife and I, one of us would come and take them around Haridwar, Rishikesh, here and there, give them a cultural immersion, which is very effective. And another project we did was to give them a library on Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, the Dharma traditions, because they were not teaching it properly. So they took my list of books recommended. And then a few days later, the teacher who was in charge, a very good friend of mine, David Friedholm was his name, and he became a Hindu later also. He called me and said, we have a problem with your list. So I said, why? He said, because one of my old colleagues, when I studied religion in University of Chicago or wherever, one of my old colleagues called me, looked at the list, and he says, you are talking about Vivekananda and Ramakrishna in this list, and the parents will complain. I said, why will parents complain? He said, because it has been established that Sri Ramakrishna was a pedophile and he was a homosexual and he was abusing Vivekananda. That is where it was. And there's a book called Kali's Child. A University of Chicago PhD under Wendy Doniger, Kali's Child, was a bestseller, got many awards, and this gentleman became a professor at Harvard here and there, whatever. So nothing against him personally, but I took this apart and I said, what is this? So that Kali's Child referred to Sri Ramakrishna, that he is Kali's child. And Kali, in a very demonic way, she's the dark energy, the dark force in this world. Did not use the word devil, but that's implication for that's codified way of talking to Christians and Westerners. Okay, so they completely distorted Kali. Instead of a power, force for good, it is all the opposite. So Kali's child was Sri Ramakrishna. And somewhere in Sri Ramakrishna's text was quoted where he says to the young Ramakrishna, to the young Vivekananda, come sit on my lap. And it said that this is a homosexual advance. And then it went on to say that Sri Krishna's doing this, his typical pose, his hip is sticking out because that is a homosexual advance. So this is all dirty, vulgar, and talking about Devi in this way, you know. So nobody from the Ramakrishna mission wanted to stand up and defend. I have to tell you that. I brought it to the attention of the Ramakrishna Mission in Boston area, the Vedanta Society in California, and it was typical, like, we are monks, you know, we are not controversial, we don't believe what they are saying matters, let them say what they do, we are rishis, we have it in our heart. All this nonsensical talk of escapism from the responsibility to defend your guru and your sampradaya and the guru-shishya relationship and defend the dharma. So I would say, what about the message to Arjun, he could have said, I am an escapist. In the beginning of the Gita, he's an escapist only. He is kind of confused. Later on, he has to be told to fight. So you guys, where are you as Kshatriyas? Why aren't you defending? You get all the glory, everybody stand, touch your feet, this, that, and the other, the ceremonial stuff. But when it comes to sticking your neck out, you're not willing to pay the price. So I said, I'll do it. So I started one of my first pieces of work in the defense of Dharma. As part of this Breaking India thing, I produced what he says is a 35-pager. Yes, that became a 100-pager. And then it became a book published in 2005, the first large book called Invading the Sacred. Invading the Sacred, first book, which was a compilation of many online debates. In Sulekha, I wrote a thing called Risa Leela. So Risa was called the religion in South Asia. It was a pun on the word. Risa was religion in South Asia, which was the American Academy of Religion, Indology, talking about Indian religions. That Indology movement was called Religion in South Asia, Risa. So I made fun of all these scholars of Risa, calling it the Risa Leela, that this is the Leela of these people. And the targets were these people writing this Kali's Child and many other books about us. So Risa Leela Part 1 became a very big hit. And then Risa Leela Part 2 I came out with, and things like that, on this website, Sulekha, the early 2000s. And this became a very big phenomenon and got me into notoriety. People, our own people saying we can't invite him to a temple because, he'll create controversy. Our own people. Ramakrishna Mutt saying, we'll privately talk to you and all that, but publicly we cannot say all these things, as if like we're trolling the lies or something. Why can't we say it? It's a very strange. I said Vivekananda was audacious himself. And look at the whole history of our tradition. And look at the Adi Shankara going and debating. I'm only debating. I'm just saying I'm doing a Purva Paksha. So that is when I came up with the term Purva Paksha. When they would say, we saints don't do this, I said, no, you are supposed to do Purva Paksha of the opponent and you're not doing it. Either you don't know how to do it or you're too lazy or you just don't care. But I'm doing Purva Paksha of the opponent. I'm doing Purva Paksha of Risa, the religion in South Asia, entire establishment. I'm taking them whole on. This happened around soon after 2000. And by 2005, this book came out, Invading the Sacred. And it was a collection of articles I've been writing from the 1990s on this whole area. And so I brought in other people, 2-3 other people. I said, you take my articles, you edit them and make a book. And they did that. But all the articles, 100% of those were Sulekha articles that I had written. So that was, all of this was done for 15 years before my book Breaking India got launched here. 15 years before that was all this going on. So you see, part of the issue I have with our community is we don't have memory that transmits. So if I were to come back in 2 years, if I'm still able to come back, I'll have a new group of people who don't know any of this because it has not been passed on. Our people we don't have what's called stickiness. We don't have, say it to group and then it spreads. Our opponents have stickiness. They have these institutions. They have the knowledge being transmitted, knowledge being preserved. The archive of who did what, the history of the movement is preserved. People write about it. And in our case, everybody takes it, uses whatever they can, recycle it in their own name and forget all this. So if I come back a year later, 2 years later, I have to tell the whole story again. So this is the reason we are not building traction, because we do not have a collective shared memory. In a place like this, with so many things I've done, right in this room, and so many things done regarding Sri Ramakrishna, which is the founding person of your Vivekananda Society, and so many things are done in the defense of Vivekananda, should have been part of this study circle. People here should know at least this, and they should say, okay, there is this happened, and we are now going to take it forward. How can we move forward if we don't build on knowledge? If we don't say we have one, then we go to build on top if we have 2 and 3. Whereas if you go to the West, they have schools of thought. So the Marxist school of thought starts with Marx, starts with Hegel. starts with these kind of Kant, Immanuel Kant, and figure out how the knowledge advanced, how it... And so they preserve and protect the whole lineage. They are protecting the Guru Parampara. They are protecting the whole Sampradaya of their knowledge system, their Siddhant. They're doing a good job. But we are not. Unless the person is a guru figure when you touch his feet and put mala and all that, and you don't even care to naturally study what he's written, so unless it is like a deifying, you deify somebody, and then you have imagery and iconography, bhakti for him. Other than that, the real, what the disciples are supposed to do to protect, preserve, document the tradition, the history of ideas and history of knowledge is not really being done by our people. I have to be honest and say that. Now, fast forward again. So first I defended the Ramakrishna Vivekananda lineage against hostile enemies that the tradition, the sadhaks and the tradition, the disciples and all these ashrams were not willing to do. And I have a whole lot of email archive where I go to this particular monk and he says, don't name me, I'll give you some information that you could be useful, but don't name me. I'm just telling you because we are sadhak, we don't do this, sir, but you do it. So I was, in a sense, being set up to stick my neck out and being hit, and then they would all run away and disown me. This is also very sad. So now fast forward, this book. Now, I have been a great reader of Sri Aurobindo. Is one of the texts I started as a child also. His book, The Life Divine, very transformative. How many of you know the relationship between Sri Aurobindo and Swami Vivekananda? So 4 or 5. Okay, good, at least some people know. So this is important. Neither the Sri Aurobindo people pay homage to Vivekananda as the Guru's Guru, nor the Vivekananda people need to bother. So when they were celebrating the 120th or 125th anniversary of Swami Vivekananda, they put out a big book. And most articles were written by insiders, people who are their own monks and all. I was invited, I was one of the very few invited to write an article on anything I wanted. Anything I wanted. And it is one of the largest articles. But it's a summary of something very important. I did not do the normal homage to Vivekananda, which everybody else I know will do anyway. Why should write the same thing? I wrote about Sri Aurobindo as Vivekananda 2.0. I said one of the greatest tributes to a guru is he produces a disciple who takes it further. So the entire Sri Aurobindo legacy and his thought comes from Vivekananda. Now, how do I know this? Because Sri Aurobindo wrote it. When he was a kind of, he was not a violent guy, but because of his ideas, the British Empire felt that he's going to break down the British Empire. Imagine a man, an unarmed man, never preaching violence, considered very dangerous. So he was put in jail on charges of sedition against the British Empire. Sri Aurobindo, in Alipur jail, he was thrown. And there he got visits from Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda had passed away, he died, he left his body. But he got, Sri Aurobindo writes, many details is written that Vivekananda visits him and initiates him and gives him the gyan and gives him the insight to how to move forward. Not just several hours on one day, but for several days he gets the darshan of Swami Vivekananda, and that is what turns him into who he is. So I said, you know what? The whole Aurobindo group should be acknowledging this, and the whole Vivekananda group should be also acknowledging, but they keep separate, they don't know, they have their own political, whatever the heck it is. This is very strange. So when I wrote this article for the Vivekananda's anniversary, they said, no, sir, you are so good there. Write about Vivekananda. I said, I'm writing about Vivekananda as his ideas manifested further, after he died, it manifested further through Sri Aurobindo. So what did I write? That's what is here. So now I come to the Aurobindo part of it. So when Darwin had come up with evolution theory, it was not there was no spirituality involved. There was no room for divine. It was just mechanical biology that kind of keeps evolving. better species, new species, sort of like machine learning. The biology is a learning system like, algorithm learning. And so there was a big fight between the church and Darwin. Church said there is creation. God created the world. And Darwin said there's no God at all. And it is, evolution is a mechanical scientific process. So this is the fight between science and religion in the West. We never had that. We never had that fight. So Vivekananda makes a very historic contribution, which I write in this book. Part 1 is Vivekananda says that divine involutes as matter. The divine's immanence, he calls it involution. Involution. And because the divine is involuted in matter, matter is able to evolve. So involution comes before evolution. Involution is a prerequisite to evolution. So evolution is not just mechanical, it's being guided. There is a certain purpose, divine purpose, which is driving the evolution in a certain direction. So he is the one who came up with involution and evolution. How did I discover it? Because Vivekananda people don't talk even about it. They talk about all kinds of things, they don't talk about it. I discovered it because this is the foundational idea of Sri Aurobindo. His entire philosophy is based on how consciousness becomes inconscient matter, it's involuted in matter, and then this matter evolves to the next level and the next level. And at each jump, the new avatar comes as a further, consciousness coming in down and move it forward. So it is super consciousness's grand plan to have this whole Jagat, this whole Vyavaharika realm is a manifestation with a purpose. And this involution, evolution are the two paired things. Involution of the divine into matter. As matter, it is matter. Matter is sacred. That is why we have rivers and all of these things which they call idol worship. They're all the immanence of the divine. Because immanence and transcendence, the two pairs, are very important in our philosophy. And Sri Aurobindo really popularized this involution, evolution. I had to look it up. I said, there's a chance that he got it from Vivekananda. And sure enough, I have the 7 volumes or whatever collected works of Vivekananda. I looked at the back of the index, and involution is there in every volume, pretty much. And so I asked some secretary of mine that you make a copy of all the things that have to do with involution. And it's hundreds of pages. So many talks, so many writings, he's talking about involution, evolution. And then I said, I take that and I take what Sri Aurobindo did, and it's very clear that Sri Aurobindo took that idea from his guru, whom he acknowledged. He took the idea of involution, evolution, and took it further. So we should be unified. This is a very interesting thing. So I have discovered all this. Now, Sri Aurobindo's involution, evolution becomes the cornerstone, the root of a whole system, which I want to have Manogna. She works in Infinity Foundation. We've mentored her. She's one of our good outputs of a good scholar. And so she's co-authored me in this. So I will not get into further details because I want to give you the meta-narrative, and then she'll get into some details. So this involution, evolution is a smoking gun telling me, wow, this is connected with Sri Aurobindo, with the Swami Vivekananda. Not only connected with Swami Vivekananda, now if you look at Swami Vivekananda, how does he explain it? He explains it based on Sankhya. He goes back to, so it means that our Vedic tradition has this idea, becomes modernized by Vivekananda in resolving the Western conflict between science and religion, which he says we don't have, because we have involution, evolution. So Bhagwan plays a role in the involution, and then the evolution is biology. So we have reconciled and unified what you call science and religion. This is where my philosophy of science background comes in. That's why I had given you all this, because I'm more interested in that. So this, we have no schism, conflict, clash between the divine side, spirituality side, and the science side. And this is one of the important frameworks of involution, evolution. Thanks to Swami Vivekananda, and you are the Vivekananda Society, you should all know these things. And thanks to him, and then Sri Aurobindo taking it further. Now becomes another fight I have to get involved in. Now, I don't know how many fights I keep having to get involved in, but there's another fight, because when I'm involved in the Aurobindo ashram in the 90s, and my foundation is giving a lot of grants for village development in Auroville. There are all these kind of things going on. And we've given grants to the Pondicherry Aurobindo ashram and individual scholars here and there. We're doing that. I discover that just like Vivekananda's and Sri Ramakrishna's legacy was being hijacked by these people writing Kali's Child and so on, the same thing happening to Aurobindo. And just like the Vivekananda followers and Ramakrishna followers were not interested in defending it, same thing with the Aurobindo. His followers not interested in defending him. It's happening. There's a man called Ken Wilber in USA. He's considered a thought leader. And some people, his followers have nicknamed him the Einstein of consciousness. So he's Einstein of consciousness. So, and they all attribute that he came up with these ideas, Wilber's ideas. This whole idea of super consciousness and future of consciousness, which is Sri Aurobindo's quintessential theory of consciousness, taking it from Vivekananda, taking it from Vedic sources, very clear about it. No cover up. He is very clear. Vivekananda was his guru, and these are all Vedic ideas. Very clear. So that is being hijacked. And hijacked in what sense? Wilber partly plagiarizing, and he changes the nomenclature. He gives it something else, name, to hide the source. Sometimes it distorts to show originality, that it's different, and also distorts to make it fit the Western framework, which is very different. So we want to make it fit into the Western framework. And sometimes they start insulting Sri Aurobindo and the whole Indian tradition as, world negating, otherworldly people who are not socially responsible. So this idea that the Hindu mystic is somebody who doesn't care about society. We have to come and save their people because they don't know how to help poor people. They don't care. They don't know how to make progress. They don't have that culture of progress, social advancement. They're socially backward. See, they're so poor. So we have to come and save them and give them modernity, progress, teach them science. They don't know these things. They're just mystics. So they're very good mystics, but they don't know how to run their lives in their society. And British ran their government took over because we were civilizing them. This is called the civilizing mission. We're helping these people. And so this whole idea is still there in the Western, subconscious about who we are and their responsibility to save our Dalits, to save our minorities, all this kind of nonsense. And this business of what happened in Bangladesh is a part of this Breaking India only. So you have to understand that when I'm doing these things, they are very philosophically grounded. And I'm doing a Purva Paksha, which you are required to do. I'm not some big controversial fellow. I am controversial for the right reasons. You have to do this. You see, if you are afraid of controversy, Vivekananda was very big provocative person. Sri Aurobindo was a very provocative person. Whether you like Gandhi or not, he was a controversial fellow. Whether you like whatever you may say about Jesus, he was a nice man, decent human being, and he was so provocative and so controversial that they had to crucify him. An unarmed man who never talked about violence and never committed violence had to be killed because of only what he's saying. His thoughts are so intolerable. So if you look at Einstein, very controversial. To say that all Newtonian physics is wrong is a very controversial thing for a young man 100 years ago to say. You see, so you can't be afraid of controversy because that is what disruption is about. You have to be disruptive. You make progress. You have to say things that people may not want to hear. So I don't consider being controversial an issue for me, but some other people get scared and they say, oh, we can't have controversy here. Why you have a university if you don't want to provoke ideas? Why you have a university? And it's such an insult to our tradition not to do Purva Paksha, but to say, okay, he said it, must be correct. It's, because he said it, we don't want to talk back, all this kind of stuff. I consider it tamas. I consider it laziness. I consider it mental incompetence. We don't have that vigor, intellectual vigor of, samvad and debate. And we don't have that. That is our rishis were like that. So you have to, as a Vivekananda circle, you have to pick up such topics. You have to pick up such topics, and this is not about modern politics. You have to pick up topics which are deep about the metaphysics, the philosophy of science, where it is contentious with something else, and your own views on it. You have to do that. So now this book, I've given you a whole meta-narrative of some part of my life also, in trying to tell you how the book is positioned, because I've obviously spent 25 years doing this book. Manogna joined a few years back and became part of the project. And the third co-author, Kundan Singh, he joined about 6 months back. I brought him into this. So, but I've wanted to do this for a long time. Now this book, to tell you, focus on this book with all this background. This book is my decision in the 90s that somebody has to give a rebuttal to defend Sri Aurobindo vis-a-vis these Westerners who have hijacked his tradition and taken away this whole theory of consciousness, this whole theory of evolution, which Sri Aurobindo based on the Vedas, and which they've recycled as their own. Somebody has to do it, and nobody in the Pondicherry or Auroville want to do it, and I've made dozens of visits there, so I know all those people. And then I met a senior person called K.D. Setna. He died at the age of 106 later. At that time, he was in his 90s, and he was on a wheelchair. He used to be Sri Aurobindo's right-hand man. Sri Aurobindo would often write, and he would type. And then he would go back for corrections and for clarifications, and he would discuss and debate. And so Sri Aurobindo had nicknamed him, and he was very fond of this man, this young man. And so he was in his 90s in a nursing home, and people said he's not talking to many people, you just go and do darshan and come back. But he wanted to spend hours and hours with me when he found out what I'm doing. He said, you have to do this. So he's the guy who told me, this is my swadharma, I have to write this book because nobody else is writing it. And because I had that determination, rigor, hard work, being a scientist, So he gave me a lot of things to read, gave me leads. And then there were two other people. One was Kirit Joshi, who was education minister in Indira Gandhi's time, and in Gujarat, education minister also. He was an Aurobindonian. He encouraged me. And then the ex-president of Singapore was an Indian Aurobindo follower called Devan Nair. He also encouraged me. So I took this on as my Swadharma, a project, one of many, many projects that I've been working on, and I have to finish them off now before it's too late. So this is that project. And this project basically repositions this whole theory of consciousness evolution, which has become too much in the hands of the West, like they have produced it out of nothing, and it repositions it back into our framework, which is a Vedic framework, and uses Sri Aurobindo's writing. So we compare a column of this is what Sri Aurobindo wrote, this is what the other fellow wrote, how they compare, where they compare. It's like a Purva Paksha, very systematic Purva Paksha. So that is what this is for. And similar works need to be done for all our gurus. So you should take on a project to write about the legacy, unacknowledged legacy of Vivekananda. I would love to work with you on this. It's a project of mine, but I don't have enough bandwidth to do all this. I have a lot of material. And it's not enough to write a little article here. Not enough to give one Manthan talk and have some YouTube video, and not like that. You need a pakka, several hundred pages volume, maybe multiple volumes, which will be lasting for decades. It will have a life of a generation or two. You need to do something at that level of research. And you need to create a group of scholars who want to take on this project. And I'll help you, mentor you, lead you, guide you. But I need young people who take ownership. You see? And so what I did for Aurobindo, I want to do for other gurus also. But I need shishyas from those domains. There are many gurus that have been misrepresented. And if you break the Guru Parampara, the Guru Shishya Parampara, that's one of the strategies of the breaking India forces. Because as long as another generation will come and start all over to continue the thread of whatever that guru did, you do whatever you want to do about this guru, but his shishyas will revive it. So they have to finish that off. That is part of their plan. So your whole purpose as Vivekananda people, has to include, while you should study and improve yourself and and do the meditation, very, very important as a step one. But having done that, those who are senior and involved in this for a little bit longer should say, let's do a project where we actually commit to a 1 year, 2 year project or multi-year project to produce a solid work on the unacknowledged debt, unacknowledged influences of Swami Vivekananda, which is so much more than just we went to Chicago and gave that talk and whatnot. That's fine, but everybody talks about it. There's a lot more that happened as a result of his influence. Throughout the early 1900s, so many people, including some who got the Nobel Prize, in literature, in philosophy, so they owed their quintessential ideas to Indian thought. And since they did not know Sanskrit and Swamiji wrote in English, that was their access for a lot of people. And that is my message to you, why I'm here. I've done one book with the help of Manogna. You need to do these books for your guru also. Thank you very much.